When the city's biggest mafia boss returns after 2 years, driven solely by the need to avenge his son's murder, we'll witness the terrifying state of the city's thieves, robbers, and killers in today's video. At the beginning of the story, we see a terrifying robbery scene. 2 security guards were transporting a large amount of cash in a truck. Right then, in the middle of the road, they were stopped under the excuse of some construction work. The guards thought it was just a normal road repair project. But as soon as the truck stopped, the so-called workers revealed their true identities. They pulled out weapons and explosives and started looting the truck. In the process, the 2 security guards were brutally murdered. Several bystanders also became victims of the attack and lost their lives. After this incident, the Fortico Security Company was shaken to its core. They were forced to tighten security measures for their guards so that nothing like this would ever happen again. 5 months later, a man named Patrick Hill joined Fortico as a new guard. On his very first day, his boss Terry told him about the brutal robbery, making it clear that the attackers were still out there roaming freely. Terry warned Patrick to stay sharp and strictly follow every single rule. Very soon, Patrick earned a nickname, H. His training instructor was a veteran guard named Bullet, but the start of training didn't go well. H barely scraped through the tests with passing marks. During firearms practice, he missed his targets. Even in truck driving training, he messed up and rammed into several crates. Still, he refused to give up and kept pushing himself to prove his worth. Later, inside the locker room, Bullet introduced him to the rest of the team. Right away, the members started testing him. Sweet Boy, who was hot-tempered, didn't like H's jokes at all, and that led to heated arguments between the two. Meanwhile, the only female guard, Dana, was intrigued by H's calm nature and took some interest in the new guy. On the other hand, John was really annoyed with H because H had been hired in his place. Finally, H's first shift began. He headed out with Bullet and Sweet Boy for a cash collection. Before they left, Bullet told him that in this job, they couldn't be prey. They had to be predators. On the way, Sweet Boy casually dropped a shocking piece of information. The truck that had been attacked 5 months earlier, he was supposed to drive it that day. But by sheer luck, he had called in sick and gone to his mother's house, which ended up saving his life. Anyway, their first cash collection went smoothly without any trouble. In the evening, when they returned to the depot, H noticed the strict security measures there: heavy gates, metal detectors, and constant watch. At the end of the day, all the guards removed their ID badges and hung them on a board. It seemed like a small thing, but it was actually a very important security rule. After that, the group went to a local bar to blow off some steam. Bullet asked H to join them as well. Before leaving, H paused for a moment and carefully studied his colleagues' ID badges. At the bar, everyone enjoyed drinks, played pool, and soon the atmosphere heated up. The other guards egged John on to pick a fight with H, saying that H had taken his job. John got angry and started yelling at H, but H stayed calm, handed him some cash, and said, "Go buy yourself a drink and cool your head." The next day, while on shift, Bullet, H, and Sweet Boy suddenly faced a dangerous situation. Bullet had gone alone to pick up a small $10,000 collection, but even after a long time, he didn't return. Sweet Boy tried to contact him on the radio, but got no response. Suddenly, a chilling voice came through the radio. The robbers had captured Bullet. They demanded the rest of the money from the truck in exchange for his release. Hearing this, Sweet Boy panicked, but H said, "No, we can't just leave our partner behind like this." Hearing his confident words, Sweet Boy had no choice but to stop, and they followed the robbers' instructions and moved forward. The robbers told them to come to a deserted spot. As soon as they arrived, a masked robber stepped out of the car with a gun pressed to Bullet's head, while another robber ordered H and Sweet Boy to load the money bags into the trunk. Terrified, Sweet Boy begged H to obey, warning him that if they didn't, the robbers would kill everyone. But H showed no fear. He walked to the back of the truck and slowly began tossing the money bags out, deliberately throwing one bag a little farther away on the ground. One of the robbers caught onto his trick and warned him not to try anything again. Sweet Boy panicked, pleading with H over and over to just follow orders. Right then, as a robber stepped forward to pick up the bag, H moved like lightning and shot him dead. He immediately killed the one holding Bullet hostage as well. Within moments, H wiped out the whole crew, except one robber who managed to escape. Without wasting a second, H chased him down and cornered him in an abandoned warehouse. Pointing his gun at the man, H demanded to know who had sent him. Instead of answering, the robber cursed and tried to provoke him. H, calm and cold, knocked him out with a single blow. A little while later, Bullet and Sweet Boy arrived at the warehouse. H looked at Sweet Boy with a slight smile and joked, "So, do you still think handling these guys is that easy?" Bullet and Sweet Boy were still shaken by the brutal encounter, while H calmly inspected the dead masked robbers, removing their masks one by one, hoping to find the man he was searching for. But none of them were the one. Yes, friends, H was looking for someone, and judging by his style of combat, you could already tell he was no ordinary man. Soon after, 2 FBI agents arrived at the scene and began their investigation. They questioned H about his incredible shooting accuracy, since his firearms test record hadn't been impressive. H replied in a calm voice that it was simply adrenaline and the life-or-death situation that allowed him to focus so sharply and hit his targets. The agents then showed him CCTV footage from an older robbery, where a man was seen gunning down 3 people. They asked H if he recognized anyone. H stared at the blurry footage and said he didn't, but from his expression, we could tell he was hiding something. No one knew that. Behind the scenes, H was playing an entirely different game. He had already recruited an insider to compile detailed files on every Fortico employee. This investigation included photos of guards' families, work histories, and even autopsy reports of guards killed in the previous robbery. 3 months later, H and Bullet set out for another routine cash collection. Suddenly, their truck was surrounded by another armed group. The attackers sprayed black paint over the windows, blocking all visibility from inside. Bullet immediately sent a red alert to the depot, but the robbers had already started trying to break open the doors with equipment, releasing toxic gas to force the guards out. Bullet collapsed to the ground, coughing and choking, but H stepped out of the truck without an ounce of fear. The robbers ordered him to lie down on the ground, but then something completely unexpected happened. The moment they saw H's face, they froze in terror. Shaken, they abandoned the mission and fled without stealing anything. Back at Fortico, Terry was stunned by the strange events, wondering how H could handle every impossible situation so easily. Meanwhile, the company boss looked at the whole thing like a movie and simply told Terry, "H is our best guy. Keep him like a hero." But after this, Bullet began to grow suspicious of H. While talking to another colleague, he even described H as a dangerous shadow. On the other side, H's personal life started to shift when Dana confessed her feelings for him. They spent the night together at her place, and their relationship deepened. But one night, out of nowhere, H pointed a gun at Dana. He confronted her about the stash of hidden dollars he had found among her belongings. He suspected Dana might be tied to a major crime ring or laundering money for someone. Terrified, Dana pleaded, saying she had done nothing illegal. She admitted she had stolen that money while doing an assignment, but insisted she wasn't part of any robbery crew or corporate group. "Please believe me," she begged, but H did not trust her. He warned her, saying, "You still have time to tell the truth. I know everything about your family and your profile," but Dana still refused to admit anything. The story then flashes back to 5 months earlier, where we see a completely different life of H. He was living happily and peacefully with his son, Dougie. Everything seemed fine until Mike, H's closest friend, called him. Mike had recently been involved in a major robbery, something H knew nothing about. In a rush, Mike told him there was a problem with their plan. One of their crew members couldn't make it to his spot, so H had to help. The job was simple. Just watch the Fortico truck coming out of the gate and report whether it turned left or right. At first, H didn't want to get involved since he was on vacation with his son, but here we learn the truth. H was actually the leader of a powerful gangster crew. Eventually, he agreed. When H went to watch the truck, he noticed a food truck near the gate. Using the excuse that he was hungry, he parked the car and told Dougie to stay inside while he went to grab food. From there, he saw the Fortico truck turn right and pass the information to Mike. But the very next moment, a horrifying incident unfolded. The robbers disguised as construction workers ambushed the truck, the same attack we saw at the beginning of the story. And all of it was happening just a few meters away from H's car. Then, one of the robbers noticed Dougie. He ordered him out of the car. Terrified, Dougie cried for his father, but H was still on the phone with Mike and didn't hear him. Shaking with fear, Dougie stepped out and lay on the ground, as ordered. But he made one fatal mistake. He turned his head and saw that one robber had pulled off his mask. That was the biggest mistake of his life. Fearing exposure, the robber didn't just kill the guards, he also shot Dougie in cold blood. At that moment, H rushed back, only to see his son dying before his eyes. Overwhelmed with rage and grief, he tried to attack the robbers, but before he could do anything, they shot him too. 3 weeks later, when H regained consciousness, he found himself in a hospital bed. Physically injured but even more broken inside, he was told Dougie was gone. The news crushed him. He blamed himself for his son's death. To make it worse, Dougie's mother cried and shouted at him, saying, "It's your fault our son isn't with us anymore. You're a failure of a father. He was killed right in front of you, and you did nothing." H said nothing. He just listened in silence, shattered from within. Consumed by guilt and burning with vengeance, H sought help from his old friend, FBI agent King, to identify the traitorous robbers. Though King didn't have much, he gave H a list of notorious criminals. Using that list, H began ruthlessly hunting down every one of them. Then he held a meeting with his gang members, demanding information from the surviving criminals. They tried different ways to uncover details about the heist, but nothing worked. They couldn't track down the crew responsible for the betrayal. H realized their methods weren't working. Mike also saw that H had become obsessed, consumed by revenge. Mike suggested he take a break, and H agreed to return to London for a while. But before leaving, he ordered his associate to create a new identity for him under the name Patrick Hill, complete with a fake security guard background. With this forged identity, H successfully got a job at Fortico Security, allowing him to operate from the inside, gather clues, and get closer to the real culprits. The story then shows us events from a few months earlier, focusing on 6 former Army officers struggling financially and bitterly disappointed with their fate. Under the leadership of their ex-Sergeant Jackson, they regrouped. Fueled by frustration and anger, they planned to target wealthy Middle Eastern residents. Jan, the greediest member of the crew, convinced the others to join the plan. They carried out several robberies, and at first stole hundreds of thousands of dollars. But as the money grew, so did their greed. Although Jackson was still the leader, Jan began to see himself as his equal, or even superior. To cash in stolen goods, they had to rely on too many middlemen, and Jan grew frustrated. So Jackson and his crew decided to directly target money transport trucks. That way, with just one insider tipping them off, they could pull off the heist and split the money right away. Once they started this, their operations began bringing in millions. Jackson warned everyone to stay careful, keep their jobs, and never draw attention with flashy spending. But Jan was reckless. He ignored Jackson's advice and spent freely. Around Jackson's birthday, the crew planned their biggest and final heist, targeting a Fortico truck loaded with massive cash reserves. On the day of the robbery, they disguised themselves as construction workers to avoid suspicion. Everyone took their positions, unaware that H had parked nearby us with his son Dougie still in the car. At first, Jackson dismissed the vehicle and simply told his men to keep an eye on it. As the robbery kicked off, the crew moved exactly according to plan. They forced the guards out of the truck, and Jan took one hostage at gunpoint. At the same time, another member dragged Dougie out of H's car and forced him face down on the ground. Meanwhile, the others rushed to gather the cash-filled bags. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until one guard tried to pull a weapon and tore off Jan's mask. Without hesitation, Jan killed him, then gunned down another guard. When Jackson asked if everything was under control, Jan calmly replied it was, though in reality, things were spiraling out of hand. Dougie, lying on the ground, witnessed it all. Jan realized the boy could testify against them, so, without mercy, he shot Dougie. His horrified crew shouted at him, furious that his reckless act could get them caught. They argued bitterly, but just then they spotted H running toward them. Panicked, one member told Jan to just shoot him in the leg to slow him down. Instead, Jan aimed straight at H's chest and pulled the trigger, watching him collapse to the ground. Months later, the crew regrouped. Despite the huge haul from the last job, their greed drove them back again. Jackson cursed Jan for his recklessness, saying they could have lost everything because of him. Still, he laid out a new and final mission. On Black Friday, they would hit Fortico's convoy carrying over $50 million in transit. It would be dangerous, but if successful, they would never have to worry about money again. At Fortico's depot, Terry instructed the guards to heighten security for Black Friday and remain vigilant. Meanwhile, Tensions within the crew worsened as Jackson grew increasingly frustrated with Jan's careless spending that could expose them all. On the day of the heist, Bullet and H were on their shift. After completing their last delivery, Bullet revealed a shocking truth. He was the insider working with the gang. He had been the one who helped them during the robbery months earlier, the one that left 3 people dead, including Dougie. Bullet admitted the plan had always been to kill the guards, but the child's death was unintentional. H was stunned. Bullet went on saying, "I've already unloaded your gun. Today the gang is coming to hit our depot. If you want to survive, you'll help us." He pretended to agree, knowing this was his only chance to finally reach the real culprits. In the middle of all this, Bullet shut off the truck's cameras and drove it toward the depot, where Jackson and his gang were already waiting. The heist began immediately. One of the gang members punched H in the face and threatened him to cooperate quietly. Jan and 3 other seasoned robbers climbed into the truck, while Jackson and another member followed behind in a car. When the truck reached the depot and the gates opened, heavily armed robbers poured out and took control of the entire parking lot. They captured Terry, the guards, and H. Strangely, even though Bullet was their insider, they pretended to take him hostage too, so no one would suspect him. Everything was going according to plan. Meanwhile, Dana walked toward another truck to get a signature from a guard named Stewart, who had no idea what was happening. Inside the depot, the robbers tied up H to stop him from moving and held a gun to Bullet's head to force employees to open the heavy steel vault door. As soon as John saw the robbers, he triggered the alarm, and a massive firefight broke out between the guards and the robbers. One of the robbers planted explosives on the vault door, and bullets flew from both sides. But with bulletproof vests, the robbers weren't taking much damage. When the explosives detonated, the vault door was blown open, and Jackson led his men inside with their vehicles. The depot was now fully under their control. Jackson ordered his crew to keep watch outside since the police had already arrived. They rushed to stuff the cash into bags. They had just 8 minutes. During that time, they killed most of the guards, but Dana, Stewart, and Shirley managed to hide behind a truck. But Shirley wanted action. She suddenly fired and wounded a robber. Taking advantage of the chaos, H shot another robber in the leg with a hidden pistol, then cut himself free with a concealed knife. He quickly untied Terry and another guard, and Terry decided to lead that guard out through the back door. H disguised himself in a dead robber's outfit, ready to fight. Shirley kept firing until she was finally killed. Dana and Stewart grabbed weapons and joined the battle. H began taking down the robbers one by one, even hiding a phone inside a cash bag so he could trace it later. He killed another robber after ripping off his helmet, while the gang, sensing things turning against them, tried to speed up the job. Then H faced a robber head-on, leading to a brutal hand-to-hand fight. When he tried to shoot, he realized his pistol was empty, so he drew a knife and finished him off. Meanwhile, Jackson ordered the crew to retreat with the money. Bullet, now with Dana and Stewart, pretended to earn their trust by asking for a weapon. Believing him, they handed him a gun, and he instantly betrayed them, ruthlessly killing Stewart and Dana. Elsewhere, H killed 2 more robbers, but Bullet ambushed him, shooting and wounding him. Bullet then turned on one of his own men, calling him by name before killing him too. Now, only Jackson, Jan, and Bullet were left alive. They wrapped up the heist as quickly as possible, loading the cash onto a trolley to head for the elevator. Jackson, already injured, sat in the truck fixing his gun, planning to kill the others and keep the money for himself. But Jan realized his intentions and gave him no chance. He slit Jackson's throat with a knife. He then told Bullet that Jackson had died from his wounds. The 2 of them went down a tunnel toward their getaway car, prepared in advance. As they began loading the money into the vehicle, Bullet started to realize just how ruthless Jan really was. He began to consider betraying him too, just like Jackson had planned. But Jan immediately realized what was happening. Without wasting a second, he shot Bullet in the head. With Bullet dead, Jan gathered all the money and escaped with the car. Later that night, at his apartment, Jan sat back with a glass of liquor, celebrating his successful heist. Just then, a phone rang from inside one of the money bags. Shocked, he discovered it had been hidden there. Before he could react, a shadow emerged from the dark corner of the room. It was H. Terrified, Jan begged for his life and offered H half of the money. H said nothing. Instead, he tossed a piece of paper in front of him. It was Dougie's autopsy report. The moment Jan read it, his face went pale. The The 4 bullets that had struck Dougie's vital organs flashed through his memory, replaying the horror of that murder. Before he could move, H fired 4 shots straight into Jan, each one hitting the exact same spots where Jan had shot Dougie. Finally, Jan died in his own home. With his revenge complete, H calmly walked out of the apartment. Outside, FBI agent King was already waiting for him. In a quiet voice, King asked, "Is it done?" H didn't look back. He just nodded and disappeared into the darkness of the night. At last, his long-awaited vengeance was fulfilled. And with that, today's story comes to an end. Let me know in the comments how you liked it. For now, I'm signing off. Good night.